I wish you could all see it. You can later. And May is a month of the Divine Feminine because it's a Mother's Day month, right? Next week we'll be celebrating Mother's Day for all you mothers and for the Divine Feminine in everyone, right? When I think of May, though, I've shared this before, that I go right to the memory of my mother always had a May altar. Did you grow up with May altars? If you grew up Catholic, you might have. But we used to, set up a table and it was a May altar. And of course we had statues of Mary. In our faith, they were all flat-chested statues. I don't know why, the whole virgin thing, I guess. All the statues, she had no bosoms on any of her statues. I don't know why. But the beautiful, the blossoms, the apple blossoms, if you grew up on a farm with apple trees, there's nothing like apple blossoms. I get chills thinking about it, and the lilacs. It was wonderful, so I made it real pathetic May altar up here. We have a rose bush back there I saw was blooming this morning, so I brought the roses in. And one angel, maybe next week if anybody wants to bring more flowers, and we can set up a little altar with all your Divine Feminine icons that you have of any philosophy. There are many Divine Feminine icons. But getting back to unity and unity, what we believe. Unity metaphysics, we talk about the masculine and feminine. And every man in the Bible and every woman in the Bible represents the masculine, feminine in all of us. So the masculine is the intellect of reason, the intellect. I reason, I get my knowledge from the outer world through my intellect. And the feminine is the inner receptive nature. We call it the feeling nature, where we feel those responses from spirit and we're guided by our feeling nature from spirit. Now I want to clarify, and I've done this before, and I know it drives you crazy, but I'll keep doing it, the difference between feelings and emotions. Because often those words are interchanged, and they can be interchanged. But I don't know about you, when I'm in my emotions, I'm reacting to something out there. I'm reacting to a thought or something somebody said or something that's happening. So my emotions just sort of erupt and react. But my feelings, metaphysically, my feelings are those messages that I receive from Spirit, the Divine Feminine that receives those intuitive revelations. Anybody ever had an aha moment where you finally get something? That's the Divine Feminine in you receiving that guidance from Spirit. When it feels like the right thing to do, you know it, no matter what reason. It doesn't make sense. You just know it's the right thing to do. When I moved to Green Valley, it was like I just knew I had to be here. It didn't matter if it made sense to everybody else. It feels like it. And when it doesn't feel right, you know that too. It just doesn't feel right. Now, are you fans of The Wizard of Oz? Yes. Remember, what did they sing? Follow the Yellow Brick Road. Remember that? Follow the Yellow Brick Road. I sound just like a munchkin, don't I? And it's a very metaphysical movie, and of course following the Yellow Brick Road is following your feeling nature. That's a Divine Feminine that's always guiding you through life, through your feelings. I feel like I should go here. I feel like this. Okay, enough of that. The Divine Feminine is also our heart. And today the one attribute I decided to focus on, because there are so many attributes of the heart, is compassion. Isn't that the most wonderful word in the world, compassion? And we all know what it means, but I decided to look it up to see what the official definition was. I didn't like a lot of the definitions. The computer definition said sympathetic pity and concern for the sufferings or misfortunes of others. Now, I don't know about you, but I never want to be pitied. Anybody here want to be pitied? No. I like your sympathy once in a while when I'm playing my violin and having my wine with my cheese kind of thing, but I don't want pity, so I didn't like that. Then I went to Webster, and it used the word pity too. It said, pity implies tender or sometimes slightly contemptuous sorrow for one in misery or distress, sharing the painful feelings of another. Well, again, that word pity, and also sharing. If you're really down into the depths, I want to help lift you up, not get down in there and keep you in it by sharing it with you. So we'll keep looking. So I went to Charles Fillmore, the Revealing Word. Now he compared divine compassion with human compassion. Divine compassion, he said, in the heart of God exists an eternal tenderness and mercy for his children. Tenderness and mercy, I like that. Kind of reminds me of the joke. George told me a joke this week. You want to hear it? Do you trust George's jokes? No, well, we'll hear it. He comes from the Isles, over there. So an atheist went fishing in Scotland, out on the lake, right? So he's fishing and having a good time. All of a sudden, out of the water came the Loch Ness Monster. Oh my God, came up and it tipped his boat over. He flew up in the air, and just as he was about to fall down into the Loch Ness Monster's mouth and be swallowed, the atheist yells out to God, "Oh my God, please help me." Time froze. You know how sometimes time froze. And a booming voice of God came out. "I thought you didn't believe in me." And the atheist said, "Oh, come on, God, give me a break. 2 minutes ago, I didn't believe in the Loch Ness Monster." You did okay that time, George. So that's that tender mercy and compassion that God has. Have mercy while I get a sip of water. So let's see what Charles Fillmore said the human compassion is. A characteristic of love and mercy prompted by an understanding heart. Oh, I like that. An understanding heart. A compassionate mind may see the error but does not condemn. Well, that's a little extra. So I went to my own, the Gospel according to Anne Marie, the 25-cent version, all right? And you can say it's my ego, or you can say it was from Spirit, whatever you think it was. It came to me. I didn't think it up. But as I was doing this, the words came to me. The compassion is simply allowing the love of God to flow out to another. Just allowing the love of God to flow. Because divine love always wants to be present. And it's up to us as individuals to either allow it to flow to each other or to prevent it from flowing. It's our choice. And not to join people in their misery, although we all like that sometimes, but to extend love, to lift them up and out of it. So I took the key words from all those different definitions. I like an understanding heart. I like that. I like the word concern for the misfortunes of others. I like the words tender and mercy. And I like the idea of extending love to another. And it's so important to meet people at their suffering, not join them in their suffering. Well, I'm like everybody. I like to have somebody commiserate me if I'm miserable. Commiserate with me. Tell me, feel sorry for me. I'm the best. Aw, they're all together now. Doesn't that feel good when somebody does that? Aw, that's compassion, right? I have a best friend. We always call each other when we need a 5-minute line. But we have an agreement. After 5 minutes, that's it. It doesn't serve us to commiserate. We hold the higher vision above the suffering, not in a self-righteous way, but with compassion. With compassion, our hearts are open. And when we're wounded, our hearts close. And we close our hearts sometimes because it feels like we're protecting ourselves, but we're really imprisoning it within our heart. And then later, our hearts need to be pierced so that energy can flow out. To allow that, to clear the energy of old wounds. To heal them, we have to pierce those feelings and let them come out, feel them as they come out, and process them out. Not build a condominium there, but process them out. I got condominiums here and there. Yeah. Humans are wired for compassion. I found that fascinating. You know, HeartMath did a study. They actually did a scientific study where they had people view video clips of different things, and then they monitored them to see what the physical response was as they were watching these videos. They had videos of animals being rescued. Anybody that's on Facebook know that that's the most popular thing, are animal stories on Facebook, right? Or a little boy watching his father or mother come back from war. A person extending kindness to a stranger. And then they monitored how their bodies responded. And, you know, their throats tightened up, they got choked up, they cried, or they released energy. They responded with compassion as they were watching these videos. Now Hallmark does it to me. Hallmark commercials. Can anybody here watch a Hallmark commercial without crying? Oh, come on, you know. Or what? Oh, Folgers. Yeah, oh, Folgers is another one, yeah. Well, I always talk about Hallmark because in ministerial school, we were in Kansas City, and that's where their headquarters were. And we used to love to go down there because they had these things that looked like phone booths. And you'd go into it, and they had three advertisements in each phone booth. And people would come out there crying and crying, coming out of these booths with all the ads, you know. Especially the one with the Down syndrome, the brother and sister, where the sister buys a card for her Down syndrome brother who's graduating. That one always gets me crying. But so here's what I want to do today. I'm going to do an experiment. Are you ready? I'm going to read something. This is a story of a man who was a secret Santa. And it's a true story. It was originally published in Family Circle. See if you can listen to it without getting all choked up. Okay, the men are really nervous right now. The women are okay with it. I'm an old crowd, so I'm with you guys. Okay, I can read this. Now, some of this he's talking, the secret Santa himself, and some of it is the writer talking about him, okay? So we'll start out with his own words. He said, 30 years ago, I was an out-of-work salesman living in my car in Mississippi. I'll never forget the diner owner who gave me $20 for a good breakfast and a full tank of gas to drive out of town. Wasn't that nice? So 10 years later, now we're talking about him, he was employed at a secure job in Kansas City and married with 2 children. It was a few days before Christmas. He decided to pass along his blessings by giving a waitress at a drive-in a $50 tip. Her eyes filled with tears as she told him he had no idea what his gift meant to her. Since then, the successful entrepreneur increases his generosity as his own good fortune begins to grow. He'd go to the railroad tracks or just stop people on the street and hand out $100 bills. The secret Santa said, the look in the eyes as they just melt with disbelief and joy is a real thrill to see. Well, not long before he passed away in 2007, the secret Santa of Kansas City returned to Mississippi to surprise the diner owner who started it all. He said at the time that $20 seemed like $10,000 to me. So that's how much he gave the surprised elderly gentleman and his ailing wife, $10,000. Wow, all together now. Wow. How does that feel when you hear a story of the compassion? Do your hearts open or do they close so you don't cry? How does that feel? There's another study that was done, and this fascinates me because I'm not really good with numbers, but it was a study about random numbers. The computer tracks apparently random numbers. For instance, with everything that's going out on the media, radio, television, newspapers, whenever there's a synchronicity of the same random numbers that are showing up over and over again. For instance, a crisis like the tsunami. Remember when the tsunami happened? I don't think there was ever so much compassion going out. All these random numbers started to appear on the media. Mass consciousness was responding together. And collectively, the hearts were open to compassion. 9/11, did we all not join with New York when 9/11 happened? All the random numbers that were synchronistic started to increase. New Orleans, well, first it showed where there wasn't compassion, and then later it opened to compassion. Same random numbers. Puerto Rico, well, we're still waiting for compassion there. What's that about? We choose. We always choose where we want to open compassion. Our life experiences are like that. Every life experience is to help us pierce that heart to open to compassion. If you grew up with the Sacred Heart of Mary, the Sacred Heart of Jesus, those photographs always showed a big heart that was pierced, either with thorns or swords, to open that heart. And when our buttons get pushed, when life experiences, we react, those emotions are opening up our heart, pointing to the blocks, open to that compassion, feel and release, feel and release. Well, you can't talk about compassion without talking about the goddess of compassion. You know who that is? Anybody know the goddess of compassion? Kuan Yin. Kuan Yin. From China. She had a very cruel father, and like many stories of these young women, she was forced to marry someone she didn't love. And she refused to do it, so she ran away to a monastery. Well, the monastery, her going there was dishonorable to her father. He was very angry and a very cruel man. So he went and blackmailed the monastery to give her the hardest labor, hardest work to do in the monastery. And the people of the monastery must not have had too much compassion if they took the bribe, but she still stayed there in spite of all the hard work. Then the father got so angry, he set fire to the monastery and burned it down, and Kuan Yin died in the fire. What a horrible story. But that's not where it ends. Kuan Yin died and about to enter nirvana, which is that state of bliss. We would call it heaven. But just as she was about to enter nirvana, she heard a cry back on earth that someone was suffering, and she said, I refuse to go into the higher realms. I refuse to go into nirvana until the last human being is free of pain and suffering. And she continues to help us from the other side. Now I hear that story, and I gotta admit, if I had that choice, if somebody said, okay, you are there, I think I might just run right straight toward it, to come back. How many of you would come back? Wow. When I meet her in heaven, first thing I'm going to ask her is, what were you thinking? And then I'm going to thank her for the greatest act of compassion that anyone could give. Being a sign of being a master is not about your intellectual knowing or your accomplishments. It's how much love and compassion you have. Compassion that flows freely to everyone. Compassion. And parents teach that to their children. We have to teach compassion so they see examples of it. I'm going to read you another story, and this was one that Michael wrote. He wrote this some time ago about a story of when his grandfather taught his father the same compassion that was later passed on to him, and then that he passed on to his son. Michael's father's name is Irvan, spelled I-R-V-A-N, like the Scottish House of Irvan. That's trivia for today. It has nothing to do with the story, okay? But when I read it, I want to say Irvan, and it's Irvan, okay? So this is Michael's words. Many years ago, when my father Irvan was perhaps 12 or 13, it was post-Depression era, and most people had very little. However, my dad's father, affectionately called Doc, had enough for Christmas, and they traveled to a nearby city on Christmas Eve that had a nice men's store to purchase a new outfit for Irvan. When their purchasing was over, Irvan came out of the store sporting a new suit, shirt, tie, and a brand new winter overcoat. He was alight with joy. They began to stroll down the street to their car. It was lightly snowing and mostly dark, when they encountered a young boy selling newspapers. He was skimpily dressed and coatless, and appeared as though he hadn't eaten all day. As Irvan and his father approached him, they were both suddenly overwhelmed. Doc reached into his pocket and said, I'll take one of those. He'd only a few dollars left, but he gave it all to the boy, and turned to looked at Irvan's eyes and noticed all the joy had left his face. Then Doc said, you may give him your coat. Irvan hesitated for a moment. He looked at Doc and saw the smile on his face. Then he turned to the paper boy, handed the coat over, and said, here, you need this more than I do. I still have my suit. Doc and Irvan sang and laughed all the way back home and never spoke another word of that coat again. And his dad passed that story on to Michael, and Michael passed it on to his son, Coyote. We all pass it on to each other through our loving acts of kindness. So today we honor the Divine Mother of Compassion in all of us. Let us pray. God, we are willing to be compassionate. We are willing to have our hearts pierced that we might release the wounds and allow that energy to flow out and be released. Allow divine love to flow out through everyone, no exceptions. We choose to live with an open heart, an understanding heart. With tender mercy and love and light, we extend that love to others. And we say thank you, Father, Mother, God, in the nature of the Christ. And so it is, so it truly is. Amen.
Please join us in singing.